Sean Pamphilon is the director of the great ESPN 30 and 30 documentary Run, Ricky, Run. He's also part of a great group that does a lot of awesome work at Kickstarter.com, which you can click on and see how you can help out and be part of some of these wonderful documentaries. And Sean joins us. When you watched Brandon Marshall speak, what did you see?
I saw his heart. I saw his heart without a doubt. I mean, I did an interview yesterday with a show in Miami, and there was some speculation of whether or not he was doing damage control. And I couldn't believe that. I was actually having a phone conversation with a friend of mine, and for some reason I just looked over and NFL Network was on, and Brandon Marshall was like silent, and he was staring at the camera, and I thought maybe my TV had frozen. And then I just kept watching it, and I tried to YouTube it to get the whole speech, the whole sharing of what he was feeling, and I only saw like a few minutes on there. So a lot of people, I think, are probably even speculating without even having seen the whole thing. And if you saw the whole thing, I really don't think that you could doubt the veracity of what he was saying. I mean, people like saying that he was doing damage control. I just don't think people put themselves in that type of situation just to make people like him better. I just don't see that.
When an athlete puts himself in a position like Brandon Marshall did, I mean, Brandon Marshall obviously got help and didn't have to expose this. He could have said, hey, this hurts street cred. This hurts me among NFL players. I don't need to do this. What does that say when he says, no, I want to sit down and I want to share this? What does that tell us?
I think it's even bigger because, for the last about 16 months, I've been working on a series of films called The United States of Football. And it started off when I was working with Kyle Turley, the former offensive lineman, because he was diagnosed as CTE symptomatic, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, as a result of repetitive head trauma from playing football. And I started speaking with more and more guys who used to play. And one of the common things is it's very difficult for them to share their feelings like that the way Brandon Marshall did, because their entire experience has been predicated on being above us, as being tougher than the rest of us and stronger. And that's how they get their pelts. That's how they get their validation from their peers, to be able to play through, injuries and things that most normal men couldn't. So they're rewarded for their perseverance, and they're rewarded for their silence and their toughness. And if you've spent your entire career being rewarded for that, it's difficult to all of a sudden, and women are attracted to you because of that. Oftentimes the type of woman you've chosen even as well. So then you get to the point where you can't be that tough guy anymore. And who do you share your real feelings with? Do you share it with your colleagues? Oftentimes not, because guys are trying to act like they're still okay, when a lot of them really aren't.
Sean Pamphilon's with us. He directed the Run, Ricky, Run, great ESPN 30 and 30 documentary. Again, Kickstarter.com. If you do a search of The Truth Cabin, you'll find some of the other projects that Sean is working on, and some really good information there.
Sean, thinking about Brandon, the NFL clearly in the last year or two has been trying to emphasize more concern about physical injury that's caused by playing professional football. In your opinion, should the NFL be more concerned about the emotional and mental challenges of playing pro football?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with this CBA, hopefully the OTAs are going to be lightened. I think that would be a huge thing. I think what people don't realize, and I'm a huge football fan as well. What's happened is, over a period of time, over the last 15 or 20 years, a lot of these guys have really turned into cattle, in a sense that their off season, they have to be dedicated to their team still. And in the past, at least they had an off season. They could develop other interests, cultivate other parts of their personalities. So when they made that transition back into the real world, they could be functioning adults, and be prepared to do other work, and see themselves as three-dimensional people. I think football, as awesome as it is, and the numbers clearly, tell you what people's, fan interest is in the sport. But what they've done is, because of the fact that these guys make the money they make, they don't need off-season jobs, a lot of them. And they can't have off-season jobs because they're tied to their teams. So when they're done, it's all they've ever known. And to a degree, it's been great for them because their chosen profession is very lucrative now. But if you look at the statistics, a lot of these guys, 75%, within 4 years are broke and divorced. And in the past, everyone looked at it and said, "Oh, okay, it's just, you didn't know how to handle your money. I have no empathy for you because you blew it." When studies are starting to show that repetitive head trauma plays a key role in changing these men's personalities, making them very depressed, and it eliminates some of their impulse control. So there's a lot of reasons why these men become who they become, some of them. And I think that people really should start paying attention to it. I watch football differently now than I used to. I still love the game. I still love going to games. I still love covering it. But at the same time, I don't come out of my seat when I see someone's helmet get knocked off him anymore. I don't think it's funny.
Now, I want to ask you about Ricky, because I suspect that you know him as well as most people can possibly know a guy. In your opinion, at this point in his life, is he happy with what his life has been, and do you think he will be a happy human being the rest of his life?
That's a tough question. It's a tough question because in a situation like that, and anybody who knows him would know that when you're speculating on his condition, he's a contrarian, so he would argue with you whatever your point would be. So I'm sitting here trying to say, okay, what would my answer be to that, and how would he process that? I really don't know. I really don't know. I think that if he keeps cultivating the interests he has outside of football, I think he's going to lead a long and productive life, and I think he's going to help a lot of people. I think he has the capacity, if he chooses to, and if he's in the right headspace when he leaves the game, to really help a lot of people with the things that he's interested in.
I was writing down yesterday, thinking about talking to you, the different phrases I've heard attributed to Ricky's mental condition, if you will. And I wrote down social anxiety disorder, clinical depression, bipolar disorder, narcissistic personality, and borderline personality disorder. All of those different things I've heard aimed at him. Do you think, is this guy okay mentally?
He's got challenges. He's got challenges. I mean, that's the best way to put it. I mean, in Run Ricky Run, he revealed that he was put in a group of people who had borderline personality disorder. He did not feel he was an addict to marijuana or anything else. But we didn't really get into beyond that. He didn't allow me there for the intimacy of his treatment, which is why I think that Brandon Marshall has done a very courageous thing in allowing that, because that's where you're going to be you're truly your most vulnerable. When I interviewed Ricky's counselor when I first started the project in 2004, she said that he could suffer from anywhere between a half dozen to 10 maladies, And if you look at, and if you look at the psychiatric field at this point, there's a lot of misdiagnosis out there because there's a lot of people searching, and people want to have explanations for the way they feel. So I think oftentimes, perhaps too much, people are given diagnoses that aren't necessarily correct. I wasn't with Ricky in those sessions, but clearly, like the issue of avoidance in terms of dealing with certain things, narcissism for sure, which he acknowledges. Borderline, I mean, it's a newer diagnosis, and all I know is you couldn't find two individuals who were probably more different in terms of their temperament than Brandon Marshall and Ricky Williams. So I'd have to really understand where they both fit into that category, and I'd have to see a lengthy analysis of it.
Sean, you mentioned that when you spend so much time as you did with someone like Ricky Williams, and as you watch from a distance without knowing a lot about Brandon's situation, but as we see other players, and we just focus on football a second, whether it's a Terrell Owens or other guys, them trying to release what they are seems to be frustrating to them on a lot of things, to find out the type of individuals and how they handle things, and sometimes get frustrated with their perception in the media. What role does that play when you've got a guy that says, I'm not what you think I am, and tries to tell you that, but the public and press doesn't buy that?
Well, if you look, I think that was one of the most poignant things about Brandon's press conference the other day, is that he really paused and he let it sink in. And he also let the people in attendance know how important it was for him that it was accurate, that he was dealt with accurately. And last night I actually had dinner with a friend of mine here who works in the media, has been in the media for a good 35 years. And he was talking about just the nature of everything being so condensed and the amount of time you're actually given to work on a story and how much more finite it is than it used to be. You know, journalism used to be different. And I think that a lot of what you see in these athletes now is the pushback on that. There's resentment from the media because a lot of these guys now are their own entities where they disseminate their own information via Twitter, their websites, whatnot. So the media, to a large degree, isn't needed as much as it used to be. And there's resentment on all levels. And I think that, that was about 10 years ago, I was working at the NBA Finals with a former player who was an all-star in the league and an All-American, and we were getting along great. And I was talking to him one night, and I was like, what is it about the athlete-media relationship? Why is it there's so much tension? And he looked at me, and he's an African-American man. He goes, race and money. It comes down to that, race and money. And I think that, you have a disproportionate white media covering a disproportionate group of athletes that are African-American. And I think there are a lot of tensions because of that, and you have a lot of people who don't really know how to address or deal with the issues. So there's a lot of subtext going on. And that builds resentment up. Well, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting story, and, as somebody that knew Brandon during his playing days at UCF, I hope he gets the help and is getting the help he needs, because inside there's a really good person, and hopefully he finds that person. Sean Pamphilon's the director of the great ESPN 30 on 30 documentary, Run, Ricky, Run. You can go to Kickstarter.com, do a search of The Truth Cabin. He mentioned before, part of a 5-part series, a follow-up of Run, Ricky, Run, the United States of football. You can also follow him on Twitter at Sean Pamphilon. And also look for the YouTube channel Truth Cabin Prods. It's PRODS to get some samples of the work and a lot of good stuff there. Hey, Sean, thanks. We appreciate it. We'll have you back on again.
I appreciate that, guys. Have a great day.
Take care, Sean Pamphilon. Some interesting stuff. Did a great documentary. It's one of the best
it is a good
pieces that ESPN did, and some good stuff.